One of the biggest criticisms that Kamala Harris has gotten is that, oh, she didn't come out strongly and support Zohran Mamdani, even though she gave him a call and wished him the best of luck on his campaign. And she did support him. However, did Zohran do the same thing with Kamala when she was running for president? Because wasn't he a part of that uncommitted group? Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and get into this show, y'all, because Zohran, he was squirming around trying to find answers, basically being evasive with it answers, and not exactly saying that he supported Kamala Harris during her presidency. Let's go ahead and get into it. And I apologize. I said presidency, but I meant campaign. So here we go, you guys. Oh, and by the way, if you're in New York, who you voting for? Cuomo, Mamdani, and I don't even know what the guy with the hat name on the Republican, I don't know. He's not basically in this race. Nobody's taking him seriously.
So let's start here. They're trying to frame you as the scary brown guy in the race. Real talk. Are you surprised by this?
You know, I'm not surprised, but it still is something that shocks the conscience, because while New Yorkers are looking to have a mayoral candidate that would speak to them about how to make the most expensive city in the United States of America affordable, instead what they're getting from the rest of the field is a closing message of bigotry and division. And if New Yorkers wanted more of that, they could just turn to Washington, D.C. We don't actually need that right here in our own city.
So Andrew Cuomo has been issuing some kind of disgusting, I would say, attacks that are racist against you. I believe you said that as well. So I want to ask you straight up, do you think Andrew Cuomo is a racist?
I can just tell you that the things that he's said, they are racist. And that's not just a description of them. I mean, we just should go to the tape. You know,
I want to say one thing. You can call out Mamdani without being racist. Him being a Muslim and then saying, oh, you know, he's not a citizen and all this other crazy talk. Like, it's ignorant. Why is that the discussion? There's enough about his policies that you can bash him on. Anything about him or his religion, ignorant.
He went on a radio show with the host saying that I would cheer another 9/11, and Andrew Cuomo laughed and agreed. Later that day, he stood next to Eric Adams as he accepted his endorsement, and Adams said that he was making that endorsement to stop a movement that was burning churches in Nigeria, to stop violent extremism and ensure that New York City did not become Europe. These are the words of the people that we are running to replace in this city. And it shows all they have to offer this city is not much to actually ensure New Yorkers can afford this city.
So I know you said that you voted for Kamala Harris, but you also supported the Uncommitted and Leave It Blank campaigns during the primary. A lot of what I'm hearing from folks on these airwaves is that they really feel like those campaigns really hurt Kamala Harris's chances of winning. And if you were uncommitted to the Biden-Harris campaign, which had overwhelming Black support, especially in New York, what do you say to Black voters who might say, if he couldn't be committed to Biden and Harris, why should we be committed to you?
I think first and foremost, my job is to earn every single vote. It's not to expect it. It's not to say that others have an obligation to give it to me. It's that I should go out there and earn it every day. And I am thankful of having Vice President Kamala Harris's endorsement in this race. And I was thankful for the conversation that we had where she spoke about how critical it is for our politics to not just have joy, but also a sense of representation where people can see themselves in the work that we do. And that to me is part of what we're bringing here to this race, is a vision that this city and this democracy could be more than what it has been, and it could actually live up to the ideals that make so many of us proud to be New Yorkers and to be Americans.
He avoided that whole thing. Yeah.
In retrospect, do you think the Uncommitted and Leave It Blank campaigns were helpful, considering where we are now with Trumpism?
You know, I think that there is a critical role in our democracy for people to showcase their own displeasure and despair within a party process, because the alternative that many were considering was to not vote at all. And I said time and time again that my concerns beyond those of just moral ones with the administration's support of the Netanyahu government was that it was turning many away from an election where we so desperately needed to build a coalition to defeat Donald Trump. And I'm looking forward to continue to build a coalition that can show that Donald Trump's diagnosis of a cost of living crisis is not one that ever had any indication he was looking to deliver on it, because what we've seen.
But did you try to get everyone together and be like, hey, we're going to be in a dire situation if we get Trump, so we need to support Kamala Harris and get her into office so at least we can have a conversation? Because right now, you can't even get a seat at the table. Did you stress that? No, you didn't. That's the problem. But this woman was criticized for not coming out strong enough in support of you, even though she said, yes, I support the Democratic nominee. What more does she have to say? You didn't support her, so why should she have shown you more? She showed you more grace by even giving your ass a call afterwards. I wouldn't have gave you a call. I'd be like, that motherfucker. You know what I mean? But this woman still showed you grace, and you're still avoiding. If anything, I would appreciate him just owning up and being like, you know what? That might have not been the best decision. It could have inspired other people not to be interested in what was going on, or it shied them away from voting for Kamala. I definitely apologize about that now, but I did vote for her. And, you know, all I can say going forward is that I'm going to make sure that we stress the importance of voting, because when we don't vote or we go with the other option, we see what happens. Boom. I'm not even a politician. Y'all, I came up with that on the fly. I'm not even a politician.
Time and time again is he has betrayed the very Americans that he told he would lower the cost of living for when he ran for president of this country.
But do you think those campaigns hurt the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz in the long run, though?
I don't think that those campaigns hurt our ability to defeat Donald Trump. I think the policies that were pursued by the previous federal administration hurt our ability to defeat Donald Trump.
So you've apologized for calling the NYPD racist and for saying defund the police. But I got to tell you, many black voters in New York, they do feel like the NYPD is a racist institution and that an $11 billion budget is excessive. What do you say to black voters who might say, listen, I agree with him before, but he's changed his stance like so many others after the racial reckoning of 2020. And now he sounds like an establishment Democrat on policing. What's your reaction to that?
Well, what I would say is that the things that I've been committed to from the very beginning of my time in politics is the delivery of safety and of justice, that these things have to be delivered in tandem, that they need not be pitted against each other. And what I'm looking forward to do is to ensure that I'm representing every single New Yorker across the city. That includes the hardworking men and women of the NYPD who put their lives on the line every day, and the black and brown New Yorkers who've been victims of police brutality, as well as the Muslim New Yorkers in my own district who are illegally surveilled on the basis of their faith. All of these things can be true at once, and I'm looking to deliver for all of them.
I didn't like that answer, but I will say, I think him taking back, it's just kind of like when they asked Kamala about, like, you know, is America a racist country? She can't say yes, because technically she's running for office in that said racist country. Just like he has to work with the NYPD. So yeah, he can't say they're racist. But what I would have liked to hear was that, you know, there has been a lot of history with the police and its citizens. And my job is to make sure that we change that perception. And these are the things that I want to do as far as, because again, with defund the police, that just means like taking the funds and putting them elsewhere. It doesn't mean that there'll be less cops or anything like that. It's about taking the funds away from all the militarization of their weapons. That's what it's really about. So him explaining that would have been he would have got an A+ for that answer. But again, it seemed like he's trying to toe that line, and, you know, he's doing the politician thing. And granted, if this was a quote unquote establishment candidate, they would have grilled him. But because he's considered an outsider, you know, those leftists just love him.
Why do you feel like the NYPD is no longer a racist institution?
I've said time and again that there are a number of practices that I find to be discriminatory. Those are practices that have to come to an end. And that's why when I've spoken about my vision for public safety, it's vision that looks to deliver these things in tandem, right? When I've talked about the importance of respecting First Amendment rights, I've said that we should disband the Strategic Response Group, which is a group that is tasked with being the police response to these protests, is also been fined millions of dollars time and again and violated a number of New Yorkers' rights when they're exercising that right. That continues to be my position. And it's something that is my position because what it has shown is an inability to deliver that justice alongside creating that safety.
So on the question of working class folks, you said in an interview with Mehdi Hassan that the reason why we lost in 2024 was because a result of our party having left working class Americans behind for quite some time. I was kind of surprised to hear you say that because, I mean, Kamala Harris talked about affordability incessantly. She talked about raising the minimum wage. She had an opportunity agenda, and she still lost. It kind of feels like a Republican talking point that it is the Democrats who left the working class behind. I mean, Trump was selling Bibles and watches. So do you really?
Y'all just didn't want to hear from a black woman, or a person of color, or Indian woman. Y'all just didn't want to hear from her. That's it. She talked about housing. She talked about minimum wage. She talked about no tax on tips. She talked about all of that. Y'all just didn't care because it came from her mouth. And so you have people like Bernie going around, oh yeah, she forgot about the working class. She was talking about the working class. Let's hear his answer.
I think that's the reason why we lost in 2024, because we've abandoned the working class.
I do think that it is a critical part of why we lost, and I don't think that it was something that was created only in the last few months of that campaign. I think it's actually part of a longer legacy of our party and where we've headed to and who we've left behind. I can tell you that this morning I was on Fordham Road in the Bronx, which is where I had been just 1 year ago on Election Day, and was speaking to New Yorkers and asking them who they'd voted for. And so many of them told me that either they didn't vote or they voted for Trump. And when I asked them again and again, they brought up cost of living, and this idea that they couldn't afford that which they could 4 years prior. They couldn't afford rent, they couldn't afford groceries, they couldn't afford Con Edison. Now we know Donald Trump is insincere. We know that he has no interest in the world in delivering on this kind of an agenda. And yet for these voters, and I think for many across the country, there was an association of his campaign with this focus on addressing cost of living. And I think for far too long, the party apparatus as a whole has ignored that this has been a missing part of our politics of what we are also fighting for. Because I can tell you here in New York, so much of what we've heard about Donald Trump and our vision that is an alternate to Donald Trump, it often sounds just like it's in opposition without much of an affirmative vision of what we have. I think that's a responsibility that goes back many, many years when we're looking at introspection, and it's time for us to actually build a party that reckons with that.
So he kind of cleaned up that answer because basically he said it was over time that it felt, or a certain way that the working class would be felt. And, you know, I would agree with that in a certain sense, but to say that Kamala did not focus on the working class that's not true. Not true at all.
I think it's super complicated, but I hear what you're saying. Last question before you go. The rent in New York is crazy. I know you've talked about this before. I've interviewed so many potential mayors of New York, and they all say they're going to bring the rent down. I hear this all the time, man. I want to give you a specific example. For somebody living uptown, they're paying $3,000 a month for a studio. They're working class. They have a 9-to-5. They work in the city. How can you bring their rent down when they have a private owner? Can you do anything to bring their rent down for that dude paying way too much for a studio living uptown?
So I've said that I would freeze the rent for 2.5 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized apartments, and I would build a significant amount more housing. The second part is critical to your question, because for that New Yorker living uptown, paying $3,000 in a private unit, part of the reason that the rent is that high is,
mind you, this is the same thing that Kamala said. She wanted to build more housing, and then that would bring the affordability. That would be more affordability and bring the costs lower for housing. So they're running the same playbook. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want you guys to see how they try to spin this into, oh, this is a brand new idea, when Kamala literally was saying the same thing.
that there is a lack of additional supply across the 5 boroughs. And that, to me, is a critical thing that we do, is that we streamline the processes for application, for permitting, for approval. We allow the private sector to build across the 5 boroughs, and the public sector also understands its own responsibility. And that's why I've placed a unit figure saying we're going to build 200,000 affordable homes over the next 10 years. And that will be done by the public sector looking to scale up production for housing that is geared towards New Yorkers with the median household income. That's $70,000 a year for a family of 4.
So the option would be to move to cheaper housing if you're in that overpriced studio.
Or that when you're building this much additional housing, that the rent is not actually increasing in the housing that you're already living in, because so much of this is also a function of what the overall housing market looks like.
Gotcha. I want to thank you for coming on. I know you were short on time, and I want to say Governor Cuomo, we've invited him on. He actually booked it, then canceled it the last minute. He's more than welcome to come on. But I appreciate you.
Okay, and shout out to Clay Kane. Make sure you guys check out his show. And, you know, and I will say this to kind of put a button on it. Zohran Mamdani, if you're in New York, vote for him. I think Andrew Cuomo is definitely in the pockets of Trump. Don't forget he used to be Trump's lawyer. Also, don't forget what he did during COVID when he was putting those sickly people who had COVID into those nursing homes and putting people in freezers. And don't forget about him. And also, more importantly, all them allegations of sexual assault and all that. Like, come on now. Like, we don't need a Trump 2.0. And basically, if Eric Adams is supporting Cuomo, that should tell you all you need to know, right? Vote for Zohran Mamdani. And hopefully next time, if Kamala decides to run for president, he will be a lot more supportive and won't start this uncommitted movement, which, let me be clear, he didn't start it, but he was a part of it. All right, you guys, let me know if you a leftist that just likes to hate me and go in on me. Go ahead and put some in the comments. I don't mind fighting and arguing with you. And also, if you love the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like it, still subscribe. I would love to have a debate with you. Love y'all for watching. Deuces, everybody. We out.